This game's not won on social media. This game's not won on telephones. This game is won with shoulder pads, helmets, mouth guards, and sweat. That's how the game is won.
Week 2 of the Bill Neese Coach. So I'm your host, Chip Hare, with us, Coach Neese. Indians fall on a tough win on Friday night. Butler 27-3. Coach, while the score says 27-3, actually the game was a lot closer than that. With we were just looking at the film yesterday at 9 minutes to go. We're right in the game and still have chances to win. So a little deceiving from that perspective. Coach, take away from that. I mean, as I said, you had chances to win, but I'm sure you have some other things.
Mm-hmm. One of the big things that we discussed tonight in our team meeting, and one of the big things I thought stood out quite a bit was field position, and it's really hard field position wise to fight that uphill battle against an outstanding football team. And Butler's obviously a much improved football team. They had a ton of people back from last year. Each one of our drives, when we had the football, each one of our drives were starting at least 80 yards away from the 80 yards away from the goal line, and except for one, we got a turnover, and we were able to get the ball down, and we thought we were going pretty good. We ended up having to kick a field goal because we had a 4th and 7. We'd actually gained 3 yards in 3 plays. So we're disappointed with that. The big thing is, though, that we try to emphasize with our players is that every ball possession is either going to start with a turnover, which usually means good field position, but in some cases that's not necessarily true, or in most cases it's going to be the result of a kick, which means somebody returned a ball that we kicked. Mm-hmm. And the amazing statistic of this game, I think, was the fact that they had 235 yards in return yards between the kickoffs. Every time we kicked the ball off, they had a short field across the 50, and then they had 5 punt returns, and those punt returns equaled well over 100 yards. So the return yardage difference, and I don't really look at it that much normally, because of the fact it's always pretty much even. It's always been pretty much even. But to have the difference of 235 yards versus we had 35 yards of return yards, and the other amazing thing was the fact that they actually had more return yards than they had total yards of offense. So that was kind of that hidden thing that didn't hide. It didn't hide very much. Every time we got the football, we're looking, and the goalposts are, they're down there and they're looking very small. And we need to be able to make sure that, when that happens, that when we kick a football, that we're getting people down, that we're putting people down. So we worked a lot at practice on that today.
Coach, I know in our previous shows in years past, and the loyalists that watch this, you talk a lot about big plays and turnovers, mm-hmm. but you also talk a lot about special teams and how important special teams is.
Yeah, and usually the thing with our special teams is we talk about offense, defense, and big plays and turnovers, and that's big plays and turnovers. And then we always like to think that special teams is just going to be even. Let's be even. Just don't get penalties. Kick the ball when you're supposed to. Flip it over. When you punt the ball, be plus 40. When you kick the ball off to the other team, keep them inside the 20-yard line, 25-yard line, et cetera, et cetera. And those statistics did not happen for us. And so we had to take a look. Some of it was personnel, some of it was X's and O's, and some of it was effort. So all 3 of those were dealt with today, and we'll be a better football team because of it.
Coach, there's no question. We're going to continue to learn and grow and be a better football team. As you talked about this in the previous weeks. We're young in certain spots, and so you're teaching and they're learning and growing. These 2 games that we've played, and again, we played a very good team on Friday night, very valuable for the next week, which is Stebbins, and that's what we roll into next, Coach. It'll be our first road game of the season. We've been on the road in our scrimmages, but so far in our regular season contests, we've been here. So talk a little bit about we've talked about up the road before. What's the mindset as we go now out of our home territory?
Well, I think our mindset is that we want to try to get better every week. I told our players this week, I said, well, I don't want Stebbins to see the team that they saw on film for the last 2 weeks. Let's put a little surprise and let's be a better team. And then the following week, let's be a better team. And every time someone sees us on film, I want them to not see that same team the next week afterwards. Because right now, realistically, right now, somebody's going to look at those first 2 games and they're going to see the 0-2 start and they're going to say, okay, it's our chance to get the Indians. It's been 4 or 5 years, and it's time to go. And I'm telling our guys, no, we got to keep rolling. We got to keep rolling, and we got to prove those people wrong.
Coach, and this is we say this with humility. We get everybody's best shot. And it doesn't whether we're 0-2 or 2-0. People they circle the Indians on the schedule, and I'm sure that'll be no different for Stebbins. Stebbins coming off of a win, they defeat Sydney on the road, and they'll be back at their place. So I'm sure they'll be anxious and to play, but we are going to be anxious to play, and I know we'll be ready for the big one on Friday. So let's talk a little about Stebbins and we talked about our mindset going into it, but what are some things that we might see from Stebbins?
Well, Stebbins is a big offensive line. They always have a big offensive line. They run inside zone most of the time. This year they've run more with an H-back offense, more of the of what we call outside zone, but it's kind of an old school blast, ISO lead on. And interestingly enough, the last, not this time, but the time before when we went over there, it was 2019. That's when they ran a lot of H-back offense, and we had a ton of sophomores playing for us, so we had to go back and look at that film to make sure that our players can kind of see what it's like, because nobody plays the defense quite lined up like ours. And we got a chance to see that during that time we had 5 or 6 sophomores playing for us, and those guys grew up to be outstanding football players. And so it's kind of a little parallel that we're heading over there and kind of got that same thing going. And I think it kind of jacked our players up a little bit to see some of those guys, whether or not it be Karan Coleman, whether or not it be Jarrell Lewis, whether or not it be Lance Reeves, Caleb Lyons, those guys were all in there playing, and they were young guys at the time.
Yeah, it's interesting, those, as you said, young guys, as these guys are young, they're going to learn and they're going to have their time to shine, and certainly opportunity will be a time to shine Friday night. Coach, talk a little bit about just our team and our mindset, and you talk a little bit about 0-2 and we want to be a different team. Talk about the tone of practice. I was in here before the show and had an opportunity to talk to some of the guys, and you would never know we're 0-2, not because they're not taking it serious. They are taking it serious, but you can tell that there's some personality in this group.
Yeah,
they're starting to get it.
Yeah, and these guys are not they're not like wet wood, meaning that it's almost impossible to light a fire. These guys are brittle. They're ready to roll, and all it takes is a little spark here and there, and they get them rolling in the right direction. And it's a combustible group, and that's what we need. We need that type of leadership. We need that type of effort on Friday nights, because in some places we don't have as much FBI, football, intelligence, meaning that should we have done this? It's 4th down. Let's not intercept that ball. Let's knock down that ball, and we get the ball at the 30-yard line rather than the 1-yard line. Just different things like that. I should have known that type of thing. And it's a learning process, and we have no problem with any of these guys in terms of effort, in terms of trying to get them better.
Well, let's talk about 2 of those guys, defensive linemen that you've got in there, and we call them Jonesy and Aiden.
Well, yeah.
And those 2 guys really have the returners for us. Coming back from last year, but there are guys that we're putting a lot of expectations on this year.
Oh, definitely, and they're great leaders for us in the weight room. They're great leaders for us in the classroom. Both of those guys are very intelligent guys in the classroom. They have a lot of knowledge, enjoyable to hang out with, great knowledge in the weight room, have great numbers in the weight room. And the thing with both of them has always been the fact that they could lift weights with anybody. They could lift weights with anybody in the state, but it took them a while to get it translated onto the football field. And now last year it came a little bit quicker for Jonesy, and then A-Will came on this year, and I think both of those guys have now transferred that over to the football field and have done an outstanding job for us.
The one characteristic that I think the 2 of them have that are very similar, is they've got great humility and they're very humble about what they do. And as you said, they're very smart, but they don't carry themselves in a way that that they give themselves that they're a little more special than the next guy. They really are in the trenches and kind of the guys that you see mixed upon different. In fact, Aiden is a guy who. Football player by day, and then he's on the show choir and thespian and the theatrics with Westfall. Is one of many players that you've had through the years that have done that. So, and Jonesy, he was a guy, I think he was eating weights before he knew what a football was. You talk about his numbers. So those are guys that really are not just football guys, but they're guys that you can really count as good individuals.
Yeah, they're well-rounded guys, and they're the type of people that they're going to have a high school career. If they get a chance, they'll probably play. They'll probably get an opportunity to play at a Division III school, and if not, they've had great careers, and they'll go off and be a success in whatever they do.
Well, Coach, we certainly wish you guys well on Friday night.
Thank you.
Just a reminder, this Coach show is brought to you by Dick Lumpkins, and we are going to come back. We're going to talk to Jonesy. We're going to talk to Aiden. We're going to find out a little bit about those numbers, those weight room numbers, and what's it like to be a Pickwinnian when we return. Welcome to week 2 of the Bill Nieces Coaches Show. We are part 2 of the show, the players portion. Gentlemen, we're going to have you guys introduce your name and the position that you guys play.
Derek Jones, defensive tackle.
Aiden Williams, defensive end.
Aiden, I'm going to let you hold on to it now. You guys, we're 2 games in. We're getting ready to play our first road game of the year. You guys have been at home so far. Hey, talk a little bit about what's it like for you to be a part of this program, and how special is it for you?
I think it's a big thing because I've read books as a little kid and looked at like Pickwick Troy books and done stuff like that, and it's always meant a lot to be a part of Pickwick football because there's always you always look up to people like Jerry Lewis and guys like that. You always think about them when you're in junior high and when you're little. You look up to the big players. So now we're that. So it's pretty special.
Yeah.
For me, for Pickwick, my family was really big into football, and I never really had the interest into it, and until my uncles came up to me and motivated me, hey, you should try football, and ever since then, I've enjoyed it every day coming here.
Jonesy, you do kind of have a reverse story a little bit because you really were into lifting and they really kind of got into that part where typically it's people get into the sport and then they start to lift.
Yeah.
You were more lifting and then found interest into football. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
So talk a little bit about how that happened and how. We know you like to lift and bench press and all that kind of fun stuff, but is that really what happened?
I was a pretty little chubby kid back in 6th grade.
I've noticed.
And then I got a little bullied back then, and so came home. My dad used to be really into weightlifting. He was pretty big back then, and so I just said, I'm tired of getting bullied. Can I just build some muscle and get a little slimmer? And I started off in my room, small weights. I couldn't bench 15-pound dumbbells. Mm-hmm. To where I am now, I'm benching 405. That's a lot of big jumps.
That's it?
Well, official up in the weight room with Coach Neesby is 405, but personally I've done 425. That's it. I haven't done much else.
That's pretty good, Jonesy. Yeah. Pretty good. Well, that is a pretty fascinating story because a lot of guys enjoy the sport and figure out that as they get older, they got to get in the weight room. Mm-hmm. That's really benefited you, though.
Yeah.
And you guys are defensive line guys. My son had the opportunity to play with you, and so I know a little bit more about you guys because you guys played together.
Yep.
And knowing what that spot is, that's an important spot on a Friday night. What are some of the challenges that or what are the things you enjoy about playing on the defensive line?
The contact. I like hitting a lot more than just standing there and blocking because I don't want to sit there on my feet and block.
Yeah, you're for sure going to be hitting people.
Yeah, a lot of hitting in this defensive position, taking along a heavy guys and everything. It's probably my favorite part.
Good. Aiden, I'm going to pass it to you. For you, what's you talk about what for you on the defensive line do you enjoy the most?
I think I like hitting people too. I mean, a lot of defensive ends like to pass rush and stuff, and I like to be fast, but I like to make contact. I like going down the line and just blasting a big guard, because nobody expects a lot smaller guy like me to hit some 300-pound guy and knock him off the ball, but I like to do it.
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah, there's a little bit of a rush from that. Hey, let's talk a little bit about, we talk about lifting here for Jonesy. You are one of a myriad of different players through the history of pickle football that have done football and also show choir. I mentioned my son, and Landon did both and enjoyed both. For you, I think a lot of people would be surprised the personality that you put on the persona that you have on the football field is a little different than the persona that you have on stage.
Yeah.
Talk about what that's like for you and what you enjoy about that show choir and theatrical experience here with Mr. Westfall.
Well, I think it's a lot different than football, because it's not so much in the contact and the toughness of it, but I think where football, Coach Neese has really taught me to be a lot mentally tougher. He's a lot harder on me than Westfall is, and but they both care about me in different ways. Mm-hmm. And I think not so much about playing football, because playing football I don't really plan to play football anywhere in my life, but why I like playing football is because it teaches me something mentally where I have to keep pursuing something, even if because I think I'm better at theater than I am at football. But but football has challenged me to keep going after something that sometimes I question myself on. Where theater is more like, I don't know, I like going out there and going in front of a bunch of people. But it's just like that side of the thing. I learned to care about people and like perform to people and talk to a bunch of people. Where out here I learned to get mentally tough and just push through things. It's developed my mentality, I guess.
Yeah, I think as different as they are, there's some real similarities. And one of the similarities that I see, and this is another show and another podcast for another day, is a compare and contrast of Mr. Westfall and Coach Neese. And while you said there's some differences there, I think there's a lot of similarities of expectations that they have for the groups at a very high level. And Landon brought that to my attention several times, that while it's different, there are some similarities of you come on, you're early, he expects your best, and I'm sure that stuff's going to prepare you. I know it will prepare you for the next step in your life. So thanks for sharing your story on that. Yeah. Let's talk about the next step. Go ahead, Jonesy. We'll let you roll with it. Graduation's going to be coming, in the spring. What's the onslaught for you, and what do you have in mind?
I want to play football in my future, but if it don't work out, I'll just go to college and pursue my dream job, I guess, physical therapy. I want to go into that. So I've always wanted to do it since everybody in my family is like a nursing. I want to change it up and do some physical therapy and treat the players or people that play sport and get injured.
Yeah. Okay. So you're long term, think about maybe, because now physical therapy, you have to get, a lot of times people get their doctorate. Are you thinking going that far?
Yeah, I plan to get like the physical therapist assistant, like gets assistant work, and then keep working to the doctorate, and so I don't rack up too much debt.
Hey, college can be expensive, but on the back end of things, there's solutions to help with that. So it sounds like you got a plan in place. Yeah. And one of the things that you got is, we were joking before the show started, but you got your own business. Yeah. Talk a little bit about that here, a little free plug here.
It's a little side job I've had since I was probably 6th or 5th grade. I've always mowed lawns when I was younger. Yeah. I still do it now because getting paid at the Y ain't that much, so
gotta have another supplemental moonlighting, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. Aiden, talk a little about you. What are some of the things that you're thinking that maybe past high school?
I think I'm gonna go into law. I've always been intrigued by like government, so I want to go into law and political science, stuff like that. I've been working pretty hard with my clubs and stuff. I'd like to get into Columbia. That's my dream school. A couple other Ivy Leagues I like to get into, but I've been I mean, it's a big shot, but I'd like to go there.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're not talking about dummies here. We're talking about some guys that can read and write, huh? Guys, thanks for taking your time, and we certainly wish you the best the rest of the season, and good luck Friday night at Stebbins.
Thank you.
And speaking of Friday night at Stebbins, that game will be a kickoff at Stebbins. It'll be the first game on the road. Kickoff will be at 7 p.m. at Stebbins High School. There'll be more information later about Indian Nation Station about as to how you might find information out about that particular game. Certainly that game also you can catch on the radio on 1570 WPTW. For Aiden and Jonesy here, we appreciate you being here with us, and we'll see you next week for the Bill Neeson Coaches Show.